right now we're seeing provinces, not just Alberta, but including Alberta, battle a lot with the federal government over jurisdiction.
Mhm.
Um, what do you think about that? And what do you think is a good balance of federal leadership and a Canada-wide policy approach while also respecting Alberta's jurisdiction?
Yeah. So a bit of a history lesson here for you. You were born in 2008 when the per student grants stopped in Ontario. I was born in 1972, which was, I know I'm very old, but that was just after the first Prime Minister Trudeau declared Canadian multiculturalism the first country in the world to say that multiculturalism was its official policy. And also, right after a guy called Peter Lougheed was elected Premier of Alberta, ushering in the modern age of Alberta. Nobody fought for Alberta more fiercely than Peter Lougheed. By the way, 30 years later, I was in school with a woman called Danielle Smith, and we took a class together. And that class was taught by a guy called Peter Lougheed. I feel like I was paying attention. Nobody fought harder for Alberta than Peter Lougheed. And that's what's led to a lot of the prosperity of the modern Alberta. But he also knew how to make a deal. He brought home deals. For heaven's sakes, he brought home a constitution and a charter of rights. And I think that's what Alberta in particular, but many provinces across the country, Saskatchewan, New Brunswick, I'll put in that category, have forgotten. We live in a world of political movements right now that are about radicalizing people and dividing people. It's not about appealing to the majority. It's about getting your 30% of the electorate to vote in huge numbers while suppressing the vote of your opponents. So I say that our Alberta government right now is fundamentally only interested in two things: picking fights and wasting money. But they're not interested in making deals. So while I was mayor, as I said, I had 6 premiers from 3 different political parties, and I dealt with 2 prime ministers, one liberal and one conservative. And I was able to get more infrastructure funding for Calgary from each of the liberal and conservative prime ministers than any other major city in Canada. Right now, by the way, the government of Alberta wants to forbid municipalities from making deals with the federal government because they want to control it all, because they want to be gatekeepers in a world where the federal conservative leader talks about getting rid of gatekeepers. It's all very confusing. But, we have institutions that work for a reason. We have a Charter of Rights and a Constitution that work for a reason. And if we start frivolously using the notwithstanding clause just because we're having a fight with the feds, then that is actually striking at the very heart of what a federation is. So in my world, look, I will always fight for Alberta. The clean electricity regulations, for example, that Ministers Wilkinson and Guilbeault have put forward do not work for Alberta. And they will not work for Alberta, and we got to fight to make them better. But instead of just pretending that the federal government has no jurisdiction over this or spending a ton of money on lawyers or is putting our head in the sand and saying, oh, we'll net green our grid later after 2045 when we're all dead. Well, you won't be dead. Hopefully I won't be dead either. But the point is you got to make those decisions now. And you got to be able to negotiate. You got to be able to make a deal, whether or not you like the people on the other side of the table. That's part of being grown up. And that's part of running a grown-up government. And I think that far too many grown-ups in this country have forgotten that we got to live with people that we don't always agree with.